Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, Windchill Change Management. My name is Rob Romanowski. I'm the Director of Sales Operations with 3HTI, and presenting for us today is Anthony Garner, who is a Solutions Consultant and Applications Engineer with PTC's Virtual Center of Excellence. Very excited to have Anthony on today. This seems to be a pretty popular topic with our customers. We have a great turnout today for this webinar. So very excited to have everybody on to learn more about this capability within Windchill. And also, if you have any questions, put those into the Q&A box. We will answer them. Try to answer them as we go along, but we'll definitely answer them at the end. So without further ado, Anthony's going to take you through a presentation and a demo. So Anthony, it is all yours. Take it away.
Very much, Rob. So again, just a quick reintroduction. Anthony J. Garner. I'm Solution Consultant here for PTC, and we're going to be going over Windchill change management. So when I do these type of demonstrations, I always like to start with what has prompted PTC to develop and to continue to develop this functionality within Windchill itself. So one of the big challenges we've noticed out in industry when we're actually talking to our consumers is when they don't utilize a mature change management process within their PLM system, the change processes tend to be very, very slow, very inefficient as people try to get their ducks into an order, make sure they're performing the right steps, they're operating under the correct workflow, and this seems to drag the process on to levels that can be very, very unacceptable for the day-to-day activities of an organization. And also along with that, it's difficult to identify all of the data requiring the change in a product lifecycle management context. Because if we're going to actually change some underlying piece of information, it's very rare that it's isolated. Like no information is an island within PLM. That's kind of the point. So even if I'm changing just the CAD, I need to get a full understanding of everything else that change impacts, going all the way upstream to my actual manufacturing and downstream to my quality information. So everything that we need to change is not always readily apparent in a system outside of PLM. And towards that difficulty identifying, it's also very difficult to actually identify where in the change process we are. Have we issued an actual problem report? Have we actually gone through the process of making the changes that are necessary? Have we reviewed those changes? Are we already implementing those changes? Is the manufacturing facility that we are basically pushing this downstream to, are they operating on the most up-to-date version of that, or are they producing older versions and are eventually going to produce scrap because they aren't implementing the change for a critical issue that we've gone through the process of actually influencing? And these all can cause a lot of headache for organizations when you aren't operating on the same page. And on that note of operating on the same page, the ERP, or engineering resource production and manufacturing execution systems, tend to be out of sync with engineering. And this will really require usually the duplication of information across multiple system streams in order to make sure everything is kind of in sync. So again, a lot of repeated work, a very inefficient process, something that's going to ultimately slow everything down. And when we start getting to the full product lifecycle view and not just simply the data view, those lack of visibility into those change statuses and those difficulty identifying the ultimate data that needs to be changed become multiplied when we're looking at not just a PLM system, but also our ERP system, our MES system, even like our QMS system, making sure everything is working in concert. Now, the solution for that is a mature change management process, which is what you will get within Windchill. So with Windchill, I can identify each and every object that requires to be changed. I can fully view exactly where within my change status I'm going, and I can create a scalable and reusable workflow where everyone knows the tasks that are going to be required of them and how we're actually going to go about implementing a change that needs to be implemented in a quick and efficient way possible. So getting more into the capabilities, like I was saying, this is a scalable and tailorable change process. So within Windchill, we have several out-of-the-box workflows that you can either use strictly out of the box, even though that's going to be probably a rarity, but you can tailor them to exactly the needs that you are essentially making this change for. And within Windchill, a big aspect, of course, is visibility, and that goes all the way to your change process as well. So everyone, every key stakeholder, and every person who's going to be responsible for the process of the workflow has full visibility into the status of the change, full visibility into what needs to be changed, full visibility on what this change is ultimately going to impact, so that we can make the most intelligent decision about how our change is actually going to be implemented and utilized. And from that, we also have full data traceability. So coming within Windchill, even adding on to, I will say, the standard check-in, check-out, uprev workflow that maintains that strict revision and version control, I can see from the cradle to the grave every single object, every single assembly's lifespan throughout Windchill. So from its initial introduction, a new product introduction into Windchill, towards every single design verification and every problem report or change that we've needed to make, I can go from A.1 to ZZZ.infinity to wherever I need to actually see my underlying information. So getting a little bit more into capabilities, just talking about the change management objects themselves. Just give me 1 second just to make sure I'm bringing this up properly. So there are 4 interrelated change objects that exist within Windchill. 2 of them are optional, and the other 2 we usually see utilized a lot more often. And there are 2 underlying processes. One is just a fast one with a simplified oversight when you need to get the change out the door as quickly as possible. And one is a full change review board, change implementation board review process to make sure all of the bolts are tightened the way they need to be and making sure everything is tight. So here, this is just a simple workflow showing how the change objects interact with each other. So at the first step are those 2 optional ones, either a problem report, which makes a product issue known to the designers, or a deviation or waiver where we can temporarily change for a product or a process, or essentially capture the request for a change. Like I was saying before, these tend to be optional and not everyone utilizes them. But for the cases where they are utilized, they are fully integrated into that change workflow that we're actually seeing here. So those all lead to the next step, which is the change request. And the change have been requested, of course, but no resources or efforts have been assigned to fixing it. And then the last step we go to is the change notice, where efforts and resources are being committed to that change. So at the change request, we evaluate the technical and business justifications. We plan minor and major change. And this is where we can define whether we want to do a fast track change review or a full track. And at the end of that change notice, that's where we create an execute or implementation plan. We assign a task to our full change implementation board, as well as every other change task. And we finally release our change and do a full audit of the results. And in the demonstration I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to go through a bit in media res of a change before it's being pushed to a manufacturing bill of material. That'll help you understand a lot better how this ultimate process really works in a day-to-day. And where the value especially comes in for a fully mature change management process, one is a faster, more accurate response to both internal and market pressures. You no longer have to wait for everyone to get their ducks in a row because everyone's looking at the same pond. It's increased change management efficiency as well as increased product quality. Okay. And with that, that's my slide. We're done for the second. And now I'm just going to go ahead and move over to my demonstration I have for us here today. So let me go and switch over to Windchill. So here, this is our standard Windchill splash page you can access from your favorite web browser. In this case, this is from, I believe, IE. So first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to navigate to the data that we're going to be looking to change. And I'm going to do a quick tour of some of the change objects that are relating directly to that specific piece of information. So in order to do that, I'm going to actually just go ahead and browse to my product context, where I'm storing every single piece of data relating to a specific product. In this case, we're going to be looking at the Synergy car, which is a automobile we're maintaining in my Windchill system. And first place I'm going to look here is to my structure page. And my structure page is what contains my WT parts, as well as my visualization in a hierarchical representation. And of course, what that WT parts, those gray gears contain, is all the information relating to that specific object within my Windchill system. And some of the pieces of information that is going to be related to those WT parts are my change objects. So I'm going to go from this top level pro card that we're looking at here down to a lower level assembly, specifically this front wheel assembly. And from that front wheel assembly, I'm interested in the anti-lock braking system and this full brake assembly we're looking at here. So of course, I can navigate very easily directly to that sub-level assembly from the top level. And here, this is my structure page for that sub-assembly. So first thing we're actually gonna look at here, which is of course the topic of our conversation today, are the changes. And under that specific tab, I can see every change object that exists in relation to this specific subassembly. So in this case, I can see my issue and variance, which is where my problem reports are going to be located at, as well as my change requests and anything that's been affected by a change notice. So first thing we're going to look at are my problem report here. So in order to do that, I just can click on the view information button, and that's going to bring me to that objects that problem reports information page within my Windchill system. And something else I definitely want to draw your attention to is under my attachments. This is where I can include any sort of, I'll say, external information that I think is going to be important to communicate to my change task operators here. So in this case, we can see I have a brake pads or overheating PDF. It's probably just a data sheet or a spec sheet from a test that we've done to kind of prove out the actual issue, as well as a URL that's leading back to this object information within our Windchill quality information system. So of course, if I selected on this open URL attachment, that's going to bring me to that, that URL specifically for the quality solution. And down here, what we actually have is a annotation set that's been made in Creo View, which we can directly open. So within Creo View, which comes free with every seat of Windchill, I can download the visualization and directly annotate on top of that geometrically accurate representation, and then associate that with any object within Windchill. And a big aspect that we have with a Creo View is I don't need the seat of the authoring tool in order to do that. So this was created in Creo Parametric. I didn't need to shell out for 5, 10, or 15 extra seats of Creo Parametric in order for my personnel and say purchasing, or my personnel who's responsible for this ultimate change process, to view this information. So it's a very, very, I'll say, important aspect as far as data collaboration is concerned, without the unnecessary expense for seats that are only used once every blue moon. So here we can actually see I have a annotation set directing me to the actual problem, and that we of course have stored against the problem report within Windchill. Okay. And if I go here, if I select under my affected end items, this is where we can see the final sellable goods that are going to be impacted by this change. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But we can also see our associated process and reference objects. And this is what lets me navigate further down the, I'll say, the top level workflow from this problem report to the change request that has been generated from this problem report we see under the associated process object. And again, to navigate directly to that, I just can click on the I button. It's going to bring me to that objects page within my Windchill system. And also for this one, we have an entirely separate annotation set that we've made for this specific subassembly, or this specific, I'll say, change object. Okay. And along with that, we can see all the objects are going to, again, be affected via this change, and they have been automatically collected when this change request was generated. So I don't need to have a very in-depth session of finding all this information. A lot of it can be simply automatically located and associated within our system here. And again, we can see our affected end items, as well as all of our associated process objects. So I can travel either backwards to the problem report or forward to the change notes that exist in relation to this, I'll say, operation. So for this case, I'm going to click on the view information for the change notice, which is the associated process object for this one. And this is where I can just go to the process that we're going to be taking in order to implement this change we're looking for. So in this case, I have my full change review board. Everyone is going to be a party to this operation. And also under my routing and process history, this is where I can see the specific change notice workflow that we're utilizing for this operation. And if I click on Open Process Manager here, I'm going to get a graphical representation of that full change workflow. And I know this looks complicated, but two things to keep in mind is, one, this is based on a underlying workflow template that comes out of the box with Windchill. So someone didn't need to make this from scratch. They probably just needed to make a couple of a couple of alterations, I guess is the best way to put it, in order for it to fit to their specific use case. And two, most of these are automatic robot steps. And as far as the day-to-day activities of the operators performing these change tasks are concerned, they never really need to see this workflow. They are just responsible for their task within the workflow. So if they complete their task, it's going to automatically create the next task in the line for the next person to assign their responsibilities, essentially. So this looks complicated, but as far as anyone's concerned, who's actually operating it, you're basically just doing your day-to-day, same as always. Okay. So let's go ahead and exit that out. So from our process, we can actually also go into our implementation plan. So this is where we're managing the actual step-by-step tasks. I'll say on a higher level than the process workflow we're looking at before for implementing this. So we have three specific, I'll say, tasks that we're doing within this specific sequence. Two of them are currently resolved. One of them is currently at the implementation stage. So first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to look at the resolve step at the top here for updating the CAD model for that brake assembly, because that's actually going to contain the updated CAD for this change task that we've essentially doled out for. So for this specific change task, it's been done by Dave, who is our design engineer. We can see the affected objects for this change workflow, as well as the ultimately resulting objects that have been essentially created for completion of this change task. And in line, what we can do here, which is very, very useful, is a direct comparison of the CAD information we can actually see here. So this is one of the ways we can actually make it before after snapshot. I'll show you another way towards the end of this demo here. But as we can see, as a part of that change task that Dave has performed, he has generated this new B.1 brake assembly. So I'm actually going to take a closer look at that. So what we can do directly from here is we can open this up into Creo Parametric. And as we can see, in order to solve our overheating problem, we have created a pattern of holes within our brake pad in order to essentially help elucidate the problem. Okay. And as I was saying before, as we go through the standard steps of a workflow, the tasks that are going to be necessary for that change workflow are going to be automatically assigned to the person in question, that in this case, that being Dave, for them to actually complete. So for Dave, one of the tests he has to actually go to is to update the BOM, in this case, that being the manufacturing BOM of the brake assembly with this new version of our assembly that we actually altered. So in order to do that, I'm just going to open up my task assistant, which is going to just be a helpful pop-up for when I'm actually completing these change tasks. And here we can actually go to our affected resulting objects, in this case being the A.3 version of our brake assembly. And here we can see that has the older version without the alteration that Dave has made. So in order for us to update this, we're going to open this up into the manufacturing associated part structure browser. And here we can see the direct comparison between the latest design version that we've made to the left and the current manufacturing version that needs to be updated. So in order to actually make that update, we're just going to select the equivalent parts on the manufacturing BOM that we're seeing to the right. And we're also going to select the top level part just to make sure everything is updated properly. And once we've done that, it's just simply a right click in order to update this to the current upstream equivalent project. And of course, once that's done, we're going to essentially add the updated CAD to this manufacturing BOM. So what we've gone through is from a initial change to the underlying design, we have taken it the next step further to make sure that design change is reflected in our X BOM, essentially in our manufacturing BOM in this situation, but it easily can be our service BOM or any other type of bill of material we're managing within Windchill. Okay. And of course, in order to make that change, we had to check out the object in order to maintain our strict revision and version control. After we've made that change, we can then check it back in, and it's going to automatically uprev to the 8.4 version or the 8.3 version we're currently seeing there. So now that that's done, we can have Dave actually just go ahead and mark this change task off as complete. And once it has been completed, it's going to move the next task for whoever is next in the chain and actually complete. In this case, after Dave has completed this change task, we're going to move to Pat, the product manager, who's going to be the person responsible for reviewing the change notice task, as well as auditing it. So here, we're just going to log in as Pat, the product manager. And here under Pat's task, we can see that he has been given the review change notice task for the operation that Dave, the design engineer, has just completed. And from this view, I have access and visibility into all of the important information that's been essentially altered by that change task that I can review here, but just for the sake of time and demo purposes, I'll just go ahead and mark this off as completed. So I can move on to the next step in the process, which would be the auditing the change notice. And of course, in a lot of cases, this wouldn't be under Pat's purview, but just for demo purposes, just to show how a change task are populated and changed throughout the actual workflow, we go ahead and assign this to Pat, the product manager, as well. And I think I see something in the chat. Sorry. Let me go. So after that, we're going to head and accept that change as Pat, the product manager, to actually do the full audit. And here we can see all of the underlying specific information that's been changed as a part of that specific process. And again, we open our task assistant just to make the steps in order to make this underlying change as easy as possible. So one thing you might have noticed when I first opened up this break assembly in the 8.9 version was there was this go to latest button to the left. And what that does is it makes it easy for me to navigate to whatever the latest working version of this specific object, in this case being B.1, that we have within our system. So here I'm just going to navigate to the actual results from change notices object we see here. And main thing Pat's also doing from this audited change notice task is also going to be to set the effectivity for the change. So also, as you can see here, that one last step that was just simply an implementation that's been marked as being resolved. So this is just a quick way for me to navigate to the information that I'm going to be setting the effectivity for, which is going to be these three WT parts we see here. And by setting the effectivity, I'm basically saying at what time I want this change to essentially flash over. So at what date do we mark this off as being the newest, latest version of our working assembly? So within that view, I can set the actual range to being exact as I need to. So marking these off all exact for a specific date. And along with this operation, I'm also going to specifically set the sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Also set the specific states for the objects from end work to release at this specific date of effectivity. So again, select all the things that are interesting for us, and then we're going to do a quick set state. Some of these are now currently intermixed between released and end work. Most of the things that are currently in work were things that we were specifically working on as a part of this change operation. So now from here, I'm actually going to go ahead and set the states to all being released. And it gives us a nice red indicator to show exactly what it is we're changing the states of. Okay. So with that being done, we can also now go to our specific task completion and mark this one off as being completed. Okay. And last thing I'm going to go ahead and show here before we wrap up is the other specific tool we have for comparison between different versions of objects within Windchill. So under the structure page, we have a different compare that we can actually utilize to compare part and CAD structures directly against each other. So what we're going to do here is we're going to compare the end result of that entire change workflow to the previous version, just to get a quick visualization of how things have essentially matured based on that. So once we've finished our selection here, A.9 to B.1, anything we see highlighted in blue represents a change of information between the actual two operations, and you can actually visually interrogate any of the changes we see below there. Okay. And with that, that was everything I had prepared for us to go over here in this specific webinar. A quick view of the change workflow and how Windchill specifically manages change towards the best interest for your actual use case. So I'll stop there and I'll just see, are there any outstanding questions within like the last 3 minutes we have here?
No outstanding questions at this time.
Okay. And with that, I'll pass it back over to you, Robert.
All right, cool. Yeah, so can you show your screen, Anthony, still? Because
yeah, sure.
I don't have anything to show. We're gonna wrap it. I mean, we're gonna wrap it up here, but it's kind of nice to have something on the screen to look at for eye candy. Anyway, Anthony, nice job. I appreciate the in-depth overview. And what I want to let everybody know is if you have any more additional questions or would like to see a specific, more in-depth demo on Windchill change management, or anything regarding Windchill or Creo or any other PTC solutions, you can reach out to us at 3HTI and we can help you with that. You can just reply to the email invitation that you received for this webinar. Those replies come directly to me, or you can email us at info@3hti.com, or you can call us at 866-624-3484. It's 866-624-3484. So I want to thank you again, Anthony, for leading us today, and I want to thank our audience for being on. I will have this uploaded onto our YouTube page, and then send the recording out tomorrow, so that everybody can watch this recording at their leisure. So thanks again, everybody. We appreciate it. Have a great day.
Everyone, good one.